Leon Valkyr rules over an empire that stretches across both the legitimate world and the shadows. His name alone commands fear, his presence enough to silence a room. Governments bend to his will, corporations thrive under his rule, and the underground bows before his power. He built his empire on discipline, strategy, and an iron fist. Those who stand against him disappear without a trace. Allies respect him, enemies fear him, and no one dares to betray him. Despite his immense wealth and influence, Leon trusts no one. He believes loyalty is a fragile illusion, and kindness is a weakness that leads to downfall. He is ruthless, calculating, and never allows emotions to cloud his judgment. In his world, power is absolute, and weakness is unforgivable. And yet, fate is about to challenge everything he stands for. Arya Reigns has never known comfort, safety, or the warmth of a home. Orphaned at a young age, she learned to survive in the streets, where the strong prey on the weak and trust is a luxury she cannot afford. At 19, she moves like a shadow through the city, slipping past dangers with sharp instincts and quick reflexes. Hunger is a familiar enemy, and stealing is second nature. She takes only what she needs, never more, never less. One evening, desperation drives her to steal from the wrong place. A backroom in a shady marketplace where men in expensive suits whisper about deals worth millions. She reaches for a loaf of bread, but her fingers graze something else. A small flash drive, carelessly left on the counter. Without thinking, she pockets it and vanishes into the crowd. She doesn't know it yet, but that single mistake will change everything. The drive holds secrets that could bring down one of the most powerful syndicates in the world. Secrets that, unknown to her, are connected to a man far more dangerous than she could ever imagine. Heavy footsteps pound against the pavement as Arya darts through the crowded streets. Shouts echo behind her, filled with rage and urgency. The gangsters have realized what she took, and they are not willing to let her escape. She weaves through alleyways, her breath ragged, her heartbeat a drum in her ears. She knows these streets well, but tonight, every turn feels like a dead end. The men chasing her are faster, stronger, and armed. She is running out of options. A sharp corner, a narrow passage. She takes the risk and slips through, hoping to lose them. The air feels different here, colder, heavier. The streets are empty, too quiet, almost unnatural. She doesn't know that she has just crossed an invisible boundary, stepping into territory that few dare to enter. She pushes forward, her eyes locked on the path ahead, until she crashes into something solid. The impact knocks her back, and a firm hand grips her wrist before she can fall. She looks up, breath hitching. The man before her is unlike anyone she has ever seen. Tall, imposing, dressed in sharp black, his presence radiates authority and danger. His silver eyes lock onto hers, unreadable, cold. Leon Valkyr stands before her, the ruler of this empire, the man who controls everything in the shadows. Arya has no idea who he is, but she has just made the worst mistake of her life. The moment the gangsters lay eyes on Leon, their chase comes to an abrupt halt. Their anger turns to fear, their bodies tense as if standing before death itself. One of them swallows hard, stepping back without a word. Arya, still catching her breath, watches in confusion. These men had been relentless, chasing her through the city like wolves hunting prey. But now they refuse to take another step forward. Leon's grip on her wrist tightens slightly as he speaks, his voice calm but laced with authority. "Why are you chasing her?" No one answers at first. The leader of the group hesitates before forcing out the words. "It's nothing, Your Majesty. Just a street thief who took something that doesn't belong to her." Leon's eyes flicker with disinterest. "And what did she take?" The gangster hesitates, glancing at Arya before responding. "A flash drive. We need it back. At that, Leon finally turns his full attention to Arya. His gaze sharpens, scanning her as if calculating her worth. She shifts uncomfortably, still unaware of who he is, but instinct tells her she's in trouble. He releases her wrist, but the weight of his presence doesn't fade. Hand it over, he orders. Arya clenches her jaw, gripping the small device in her pocket. Something about this man unsettles her, but she's not ready to give in. I don't even know what's on it, she says. Leon studies her for a moment, then speaks again, slower this time. You don't need to. The gangsters remain silent, waiting for his command. Arya realizes that whatever power this man holds, it terrifies them more than any stolen information. Leon Valker isn't just another crime boss. He is something far worse. And now, he's interested, not in her, but in what she has. Leon takes the flash drive from Arya's hand without giving her a choice. He turns it over between his fingers, his expression unreadable. Without a word, he signals to one of his men, who steps forward with a tablet. Within seconds, the contents of the drive appear on the screen. His eyes narrow as he scans the files. Names, transactions, hidden dealings. It takes only a moment to see the truth. This isn't just stolen data. It's evidence of a conspiracy against him. Someone in his empire has been working in the shadows, planning to overthrow him. Leon's grip tightens around the tablet. If this information had fallen into the wrong hands, it could have been disastrous. And yet, it ended up with a street thief. He looks down at Arya, his gaze cold. Where did you get this? Arya crosses her arms. I told you, I don't even know what's on it. I grabbed it by accident. Leon studies her carefully. She doesn't seem like a spy. She's young, reckless, but not the kind of person who would orchestrate something like this. And yet, he can't take risks. He steps closer, his presence suffocating. Whether you meant to or not, you have something that people would kill for. That makes you a problem. Arya's heart pounds. So what? You're going to get rid of me? Leon tilts his head slightly, considering. Then, instead of answering, he turns to his men. Take her to the estate. Arya stiffens. Wait, what? Leon looks at her again, his tone final. You're coming with me. She glares at him, anger flickering in her eyes. I don't need your protection. Leon smirks, but there's no warmth in it. Who said anything about protection? Without another word, his men move. Arya struggles, but it's useless. She is no longer just a street thief. She is now a prisoner of the most dangerous man in the world. The ride to Leon's estate is silent. Arya sits in the back of a sleek black car, flanked by armed men who don't speak a word. The city lights fade into darkness as they drive toward the outskirts, where the real empire of Leon Valker begins. When they arrive, Arya's breath catches. The estate is massive, towering walls, security cameras at every corner, and guards stationed like statues. It looks less like a home and more like a fortress. Leon steps out first, walking ahead without a glance back. The men escort Arya inside, leading her through marble halls, past chandeliers that glow like artificial stars. Everything is pristine, cold, and suffocatingly perfect. A door swings open, and she is pushed inside. The room is bigger than any place she's ever stayed in. Polished floors, silk sheets, and a massive window overlooking the gardens. It's a palace compared to the streets, but Arya knows one thing. A golden cage is still a cage. She spins toward the guards. I'm not staying here. One of them doesn't even blink. Orders from His Majesty. You're not to leave this room. Arya clenches her fists. Like hell I'm staying. The moment they shut the door, she's already moving. Checking the windows. Locked. Testing the walls. Too smooth to climb. Then she notices the vent above the bed. Small, but big enough for her to squeeze through. Minutes later, she's crawling through the air ducts, heart pounding as she navigates blindly. She finds an opening, pushing it open just enough to slip out. The second her feet hit the ground, a voice stops her cold. Going somewhere. She barely has time to react before a hand grips her wrist and yanks her back. She stumbles, looking up, straight into Leon's silver eyes. He doesn't look surprised. If anything, he looks amused. Did you really think you could escape? Arya glares at him. I had to try. Leon's grip tightens slightly. Then let me make this clear. You are here because I allow it. Try to run again, and you won't like what happens next. His tone is calm, but there is no mistaking the warning. He lets go of her wrist and steps back. Now, go back to your room, unless you'd rather see what real consequences look like. Arya stands her ground for a moment, but she knows she has no choice. With one last glare, she turns and walks back, her mind already racing with her next move. Leon watches her go, a hint of intrigue flickering in his cold gaze. Morning light filters through the massive windows of the estate. But for Arya, it doesn't bring comfort. She wakes in a bed too soft, in a room too grand, surrounded by walls that feel more like chains. She isn't a guest here. She is a prisoner. When the guards escort her to the dining hall, she expects another round of silence and cold stares. Instead, she finds Leon seated at the head of a long table, sipping coffee as if he didn't just kidnap her the night before. She stops at the doorway, crossing her arms. So, what is this? My last meal before you decide what to do with me? Leon doesn't even glance up. If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't be standing there. Arya walks forward, unafraid. Right, because I'm just so important to you. Leon finally looks at her, his silver eyes sharp. You stole something valuable. That makes you important for now. Arya scoffs. Oh, please. I got lucky. If those guys had caught me first, you wouldn't even know I existed. Leon sets, his cup down, studying her. And yet, here you are, sitting in my home, talking back to me like you aren't surrounded by men who follow my every command. Arya doesn't flinch. You think that scares me? I've dealt with worse than some overpaid bodyguards. Leon leans back in his chair, expression unreadable. You don't understand who I am, do you? Arya tilts her head. I know exactly who you are. Some rich tyrant who thinks he owns the world. Silence fills the room. The guards tense, waiting for Leon's reaction. To their shock, he laughs. A low, quiet chuckle, as if her words were the most amusing thing he's heard in years. You're either brave or incredibly stupid, he says. Arya smirks. Why not both? Leon watches her for a moment longer. Most people cower before him, afraid to speak without his permission. But this girl, this thief, this nobody, challenges him without hesitation. It should annoy him. It should make him want to put her in her place. Instead, he finds himself intrigued. Later that day, Arya is brought to Leon's office, a vast space filled with towering bookshelves, polished marble, and an air of absolute authority. Leon stands near his desk, eyes fixed on the screen in front of him. The flash drive's contents are displayed, lines of information scrolling across the monitor. Without looking at her, he speaks. Do you have any idea what you stole? Arya crosses her arms. I already told you I didn't know what was on it. Leon finally turns to face her. This isn't just information. It's proof of a conspiracy. The syndicate that was chasing you, they've been working against me for years. Arya raises an eyebrow. And that's my problem because… Leon steps closer. Because you're in the middle of it now. They'll hunt you down whether you meant to be involved or not. Arya scoffs. Great. So what? You're going to kill me to keep your secret safe. Leon studies her for a moment before shaking his head. No, I have a better use for you. Arya tenses. I don't like the sound of that. Leon's voice remains calm, but there's an unmistakable weight to his words. You've already proven you can get into places you shouldn't. You're quick, resourceful, and people underestimate you. He pauses before adding, I can use that. Arya narrows her eyes. You want me to work for you? Leon nods. You'll act as my informant, gather intel, help me dismantle my enemies from the inside. Arya lets out a short laugh. And if I say no? Leon's expression doesn't change. Then I let you go. She blinks, caught off guard. But, he continues, the moment you step outside these walls, the syndicate will come for you. You won't last a day. Arya clenches her jaw, knowing he's right. If she leaves, she's dead. If she stays, she's playing a game where the rules belong to him. Her hands curl into fists. I don't trust you. Leon smirks. Good. Trust makes people careless. She exhales sharply, then looks him in the eye. Fine, I'll do it. But don't think for a second that I'm your pawn. Leon watches her, something unreadable flickering in his gaze. We'll see. Days pass, and Arya slowly adjusts to life inside Leon's estate. She is still a prisoner, but the walls no longer feel as suffocating. She watches, observes, and begins to notice things she hadn't before. Leon Valker is ruthless. That much is undeniable. His commands are absolute. His presence enough to make even his most loyal men tread carefully. But in the quiet moments, when no one is watching, she catches glimpses of something else. Late one night, unable to sleep, she wanders through the halls and hears faint voices from his office. She peeks inside, expecting to see him discussing another brutal strategy, another way to tighten his grip on power. Instead, she sees him alone, seated at his desk, rubbing his temple as if exhaustion weighs on him. A glass of untouched whiskey sits beside a stack of files, but his eyes aren't on the documents. They are distant, lost in thoughts he never shares with anyone. Another time, she finds herself in the library, running her fingers over books she never had the privilege to read. She's startled when Leon's voice breaks the silence. You can take one if you want. She turns to find him standing in the doorway watching her. She scoffs. Didn't take you for the type to care about books. Leon walks past her, pulling a worn-out novel from the shelf. Even tyrants have their vices. For a moment, he looks almost normal, almost human. Arya studies him carefully. Why do you do it? Leon raises an eyebrow. Do what? Rule like this. Control everything. Do you even have a choice? Leon's smirk fades. For a second, she thinks he won't answer. Then he simply says, choice is an illusion. He places the book back on the shelf and walks away, leaving her with more questions than answers. The black car moves smoothly through the city streets, its tinted windows shielding the two passengers inside. Arya sits beside Leon in the back seat, arms crossed, eyes flickering between him and the unfamiliar roads outside. She had expected to be locked away in his mansion forever. But tonight, things are different. Tonight, Leon is bringing her along. She glances at him. So, what's the plan? Or am I just here to watch you glare at people until they break? Leon doesn't look at her. You're here to prove you're not useless. The car slows as they approach a luxury hotel, one of Leon's properties. Inside, a meeting is taking place. A gathering of businessmen and underground figures. Leon suspects that one of them has been leaking information to his enemies. They step out of the car, entering through a private entrance. The atmosphere inside is tense. Men in suits murmuring over glasses of expensive liquor. Arya stays close, her sharp eyes scanning the room. Leon moves with his usual cold confidence, but he isn't the only one people are watching. Arya can feel the stares. Curious. Suspicious. She doesn't belong here, and they know it. A waiter walks by, offering drinks. Arya notices something. His hands, shaking slightly. his gaze flickering toward a group of men in the corner. She follows his line of sight and catches a subtle exchange. One man slipping a note into another's pocket. She leans toward Leon and whispers, "That guy in the gray suit, he's your rat." Leon follows her gaze, his expression unreadable. "And how do you know?" Arya smirks. "Because he just got paid for it." Leon watches for a moment, then nods slightly. Within seconds, one of his men moves discreetly, intercepting the traitor before he can leave. The man's face pales as he realizes his mistake. Leon turns to Arya, studying her with new interest. "Not bad." Arya shrugs. "Told you I'm not useless." For the first time, Leon sees it. Not just defiance, not just recklessness, but potential. The night air is thick with tension as Leon and Arya step outside the hotel, the mission seemingly complete. His men move ahead, securing the area. But something feels off. The street is too quiet, the shadows too deep. Arya's instincts scream at her just seconds before it happens. A flash of metal, a gun raised from the darkness. Without thinking, she moves. Leon hears the click of the trigger, but before he can react, a force slams into him. Arya, shoving him aside just as the bullet tears through the space where he had been standing. The shot cracks through the air, followed by chaos. Leon's men take down the attacker instantly, but Leon isn't looking at them. His eyes are locked on Arya, who now stands in front of him, breath heavy, hands clenched. She had thrown herself into danger for him. No one has ever done that before. Not his men, not his allies. People follow him out of fear, obey him out of self-preservation. But Arya, this stubborn, reckless orphan, had acted without hesitation. She turns to him, eyes flashing. "You're welcome, by the way." Leon doesn't respond immediately. He just watches her, something unreadable in his expression. It isn't amusement. It isn't cold calculation. It's something else entirely. For the first time in his life, he doesn't know what to do with it. Arya huffs, brushing herself off. "Next time, maybe try ducking." Leon's lips twitch, almost forming a smirk. Almost. As they step back into the car, the air between them has changed. Arya is no longer just a prisoner, no longer just a tool for him to use. She has become a part of his world. And whether she realizes it or not, she has just altered the course of both their lives forever.